As the political landscape gears up for the 2024 elections, a chilling specter of a looming storm is coming to focus on the horizon: the possibility of a Donald Trump return to power in 2025. In the shadows of our collective fears, we delve into the forbidden, discussing a subject whispered only in hushed tones: a specter haunting the corridors of power. Brace yourself as we unravel the enigma that is Donald Trump, penetrating the sinister tapestry of his policies and agenda. Peer into the abyss of uncertainty as we dare to predict the ominous repercussions for our planet, should he emerge victorious in the 2024 election. A chilling narrative of climate upheaval, both immediate and enduring. Join us on this perilous journey, where the stakes are nothing less than the fate of our world. This is the end game, shrouded in the unsettling suspense of an impending tempest. With his brazen disregard for environmental concerns and his determination to unravel crucial climate legislation, the future under a Trump administration threatens to be a bleak canvas painted in the ominous hues of environmental catastrophe. Donald Trump's stance on climate change is no secret, and his intentions are clear: dismantle the United States climate legislation, muzzle government scientists, and unleash a frenzied era of oil and gas drilling. Not only that, but Donald Trump wants to push for even less power at the Environmental Protection Agency so that they have even less oversight legislations, which will not only cause more climate change, but will increase the pollution and air pollution, costing countless lives over the long term. If Trump, the climate change denier, wins, we all lose. The repercussions for America's environment and the global climate crisis will be nothing short of catastrophic. One of the most alarming consequences of a Trump victory in 2024 is the inevitable erosion of climate policies that were painstakingly crafted to address the escalating environmental crisis. The United States, once a leader in the fight against climate change, could find itself unshackled and free, falling into a pit of unrestrained carbon emissions. The Clean Power Plan, the bedrock of the nation's commitment to reducing greenhouse gases, would likely be shredded, leaving the country vulnerable to the ravages of an escalating climate crisis. Furthermore, Trump administration has historically exhibited a disdain for science and scientific experts. A crackdown on government scientists could stifle critical research on climate change, hindering our ability to understand, mitigate, and adapt to the unfolding environmental catastrophe. The suppression of vital information not only endangers the well-being of American citizens but also weakens the nation's position on the global stage. The Paris Climate Agreement, a beacon of hope in the fight against climate change, would not merely be abandoned but buried under the weight of Trump's policies. The collaborative effort of nations to limit global temperature rise would crumble, and the United States, one of the world's largest contributors to greenhouse gas emissions, would retreat into isolation, leaving the fate of our planet hanging in the balance. In a dystopian future shaped by Trump's vision, oil and gas drilling would reach unprecedented levels, tearing through pristine landscapes and endangering fragile ecosystems. The fragile balance that sustains our planet would be disrupted, leading to irreversible damage to biodiversity and the loss of crucial habitats. The Arctic, already grappling with the consequences of melting ice caps, could face an accelerated environmental meltdown, with devastating implications for wildlife and indigenous communities. For climate change deniers who may dismiss these concerns, the stakes are too high to ignore, which we'll explain in the next chapter. The consequences of a Trump victory in 2024 extend beyond political allegiances. They threaten the very fabric of our planet and all life on Earth, including us. As temperatures rise, storms intensify, and ecosystems collapse, the horrifying reality of a world shaped by Trump's policies becomes increasingly difficult to ignore. In the face of such a looming disaster, it is imperative for voters to consider the long-term consequences of their choices. The climate crisis does not discriminate based on political affiliations, and the devastation it brings will affect us all. As the 2024 elections draw near, the question is not merely about the political direction of the nation but about the future of our planet and the generations that will inherit the consequences of our choices. The time to act is now, before the coming Trump storm becomes unstoppable, and the damage irreparable. In the nightmarish scenario of a Donald Trump victory in 2024, the United States would likely experience a chilling array of environmental disasters, each contributing to the unraveling fabric of our delicate ecosystem. The southwestern United States, already grappling with water scarcity issues, would face an exacerbated crisis under Trump's policies. Dismantling climate legislation could lead to weakened regulations on water usage and management, intensifying the strain on already overdrawn water resources. Prolonged droughts and dwindling water supplies would become the new normal, placing immense pressure on agriculture, communities, and ecosystems in states like California, Arizona, and Nevada. The southeastern United States could be gripped by more frequent and intense heat waves. Rising temperatures coupled with reduced regulations on carbon emissions could accelerate climate change, making cities like Miami, New Orleans, and Atlanta increasingly vulnerable to extreme heat events. This could have dire consequences for public health, agriculture, and energy consumption, as well as disproportionately impacting vulnerable communities. The Trump administration's push for increased drilling and a disregard for environmental protections could lead to a surge in wildfires across the western and midwestern regions. The combination of extended droughts, higher temperatures, and the expansion of flammable landscapes due to increased drilling activities would create a perfect storm for devastating wildfires. Communities in states like California, Oregon, and Colorado would find themselves on the front lines of an escalating inferno. Trump's dismissal of the Paris Climate Agreement and his reluctance to address rising sea levels could spell disaster for coastal communities. Cities like Miami, New York, and New Orleans would face accelerated sea level rise, causing widespread flooding, coastal erosion, and the displacement of millions of residents. The economic and social toll of such events would be immeasurable, straining emergency response systems and challenging the very existence of coastal cities. A potential Trump win in 2024, coupled with a continued disregard for climate change and environmental regulations, could have profound consequences for states along the Gulf of Mexico and the Atlantic seaboard, particularly concerning the intensity and frequency of hurricanes. Here are several ways a Trump win might impact these regions. The warming of sea surface temperatures is a key factor contributing to the intensity of hurricanes. A lack of commitment to addressing climate change and reducing greenhouse gas emissions could lead to a scenario where global temperatures continue to rise. Warmer seas provide more energy for hurricanes, potentially resulting in stronger and more destructive storms. States along the Gulf of Mexico, such as Texas, Louisiana, Mississippi, Alabama, and Florida, would face an elevated risk of experiencing more powerful hurricanes with intensified wind speeds and storm surges. In other words, some of the states with the highest vote counts for Trump in 2016 will be the most damaged and beaten if Trump wins in 2024. The Trump administration's dismissal of climate science and reluctance to address sea level rise could exacerbate the vulnerability of coastal areas. As hurricanes make landfall, the combination of storm surges and higher sea levels due to climate change could lead to increased coastal erosion and flooding. Communities in Florida, Louisiana, and other Gulf Coast states would face heightened risks, with the potential for more severe and widespread impacts on infrastructure, property, and livelihoods. A continuation of policies that downplay the significance of climate change and reduce funding for environmental and disaster preparedness initiatives could leave states ill-equipped to handle the increasing threats posed by hurricanes. Adequate preparation, early warning systems, and resilient infrastructure are essential for minimizing the impact of hurricanes on communities, and a failure to prioritize these measures could result in more significant human and economic losses. Think more Hurricane Katrinas because of Trump. Or should I call them Hurricanes Trump? The Gulf Coast is home to vital wetland ecosystems that act as natural buffers against storm surges and hurricanes. Policies favoring increased development, resource extraction, and a disregard for environmental protections could compromise these critical natural defenses. Diminishing wetlands would leave coastal areas more exposed and susceptible to the devastating impacts of hurricanes. The brunt of hurricane impacts often falls disproportionately on marginalized communities. A lack of emphasis on social equity and resilience planning could leave vulnerable populations at greater risk of displacement and inadequate response to the aftermath of hurricanes. States with large coastal populations, such as Florida, would need comprehensive strategies to address the social and economic dimensions of hurricane impacts. In summary, a Trump win in 2024 without a commitment to addressing climate change and bolstering environmental resilience measures could result in a more perilous situation for states along the Gulf of Mexico and the Atlantic seaboard. The combination of stronger hurricanes, rising sea levels, and inadequate preparedness could lead to increased risks, putting both the environment and the well-being of communities in jeopardy. Responsible climate policies and proactive measures are essential to mitigate the potential impact of these threats on vulnerable regions. Unbridled drilling and exploitation of natural resources could disrupt fragile ecosystems and threaten biodiversity. The Arctic National Wildlife Refuge, an ecological treasure, might face irreversible damage from expanded oil and gas drilling, impacting iconic species like polar bears and caribou. The delicate balance of ecosystems across the nation could be disturbed, leading to cascading effects on flora and fauna. In confronting the potential consequences of a Trump victory in 2024, it is crucial to acknowledge that the impacts of climate change are interconnected and multifaceted. The above examples represent a fraction of the potential disasters that could unfold, emphasizing the urgent need for responsible environmental stewardship and a commitment to sustainable policies that prioritize the well-being of our planet over short-term gains. The choice in the upcoming election is not just political, it is a decision that will shape the very landscape of our future and the future of generations to come. Remember that, because I know many people are upset at President Joe Biden's support for Israel in the face of that country's genocide of Palestinians. We need a permanent ceasefire in Gaza now. I've struggled with that issue, but at the end of the day, we have to vote for Joe Biden in record numbers anyway, because if we don't, Donald Trump will bring hellfire to the climate and culture, society, the economy, our civilization, and even humanity itself will be at risk of extinction. That being said, Joe Biden needs to do everything he can for the countless victims in Gaza. Yes, the hostages need to be returned and Hamas taken down, but none of that justifies genocide of tens of thousands. President Biden, tell Benjamin Netanyahu we demand an immediate and permanent ceasefire now, or if you have any other reason to doubt Biden, remember that having a Trump White House would be worse. But back to Trump, while it's challenging to provide a number of species that will go extinct if Trump wins in 2024 and is able to enact his anti-environmental agenda sponsored by the fossil fuel industry and the industries, industrialists and billionaires who support them, the policies and attitudes associated with his administration's approach to environmental regulations and conservation efforts could significantly increase the risk of species loss. Several factors contribute to this heightened threat. The Trump administration, during its previous term, pursued a deregulatory agenda, aiming to roll back key environmental protections. This included altering the Endangered Species Act, a crucial piece of legislation that safeguards imperiled species and their habitats. Any further dismantling of these protections could leave vulnerable species at the mercy of unchecked human activities. With an emphasis on expanding oil and gas drilling, coupled with potential reductions in protected areas, critical habitats for various species would be under increased threat. Habitat destruction and fragmentation are leading drivers of species decline and can push numerous plants and animals toward extinction by disrupting their ecosystems. And beyond that, destruction of ecosystems can damage the land itself, making it more vulnerable to storms, as we discussed earlier in regards to soil erosion. Places like Louisiana's Mississippi River Delta will see an acceleration of land lost to the sea. No Gulf state, especially the residents of Louisiana and Florida, should vote for Donald Trump. A lack of commitment to international climate agreements and a failure to address domestic carbon emissions could exacerbate climate change. Rapid climate change disrupts ecosystems and alters the availability of resources, making it difficult for many species to adapt. This can push them towards the brink of extinction, especially those with specific habitat requirements or narrow geographic ranges. The potential disregard for conservation efforts could jeopardize keystone species, think bees, beavers, mangroves, etc., which play disproportionately large roles in maintaining ecosystem stability. The loss of keystone species can trigger cascading effects throughout entire ecosystems, potentially leading to the decline or extinction of other dependent species. The United States is home to a diverse range of ecosystems and species, and decisions made at the national level can have global ramifications. If the U.S. were to retreat from international conservation efforts and climate agreements, it would hinder global attempts to address the biodiversity crisis and mitigate the impacts of climate change. The ecological consequences would not only be felt within the borders of the United States but would resonate globally, contributing to the ongoing biodiversity crisis. Responsible environmental stewardship is imperative to mitigate these risks and ensure a sustainable future for all living organisms on our planet. All world leaders should go on record and rebuke Trump and tell him what they think of his environmental policies, especially Mexico and Canada that will be the most impacted by the degradation of America. Environment loss and more severe weather will only add more human deaths. Our next chapter will discuss more deaths that we can expect from a Trump win in 2024. A Trump win in 2024, marked by a disregard for environmental regulations and a lack of commitment to addressing climate change, could contribute to a range of adverse health outcomes for the American population. Here are several potential health consequences associated with environmental degradation under such a scenario. Weakening regulations on air pollutants, pesticides and emissions could result in increased air pollution levels. Exposure to pollutants such as particulate matter, nitrogen dioxide, and ozone has been linked to respiratory issues, exacerbation of pre-existing conditions like asthma, and an elevated risk of cardiovascular diseases. Elevated levels of air pollution, coupled with potential lax regulations on industrial emissions, could contribute to a rise in respiratory illnesses. This includes an increased incidence of conditions like bronchitis, pneumonia, and exacerbations of chronic respiratory diseases, adversely affecting the respiratory health of vulnerable populations. Weakened regulations on industrial waste disposal and toxic substances could result in increased exposure to carcinogens. This heightened exposure to environmental toxins may contribute to a higher risk of cancer, as certain pollutants have been linked to the development of various forms of the disease. Poor air quality and exposure to environmental pollutants have been associated with an elevated risk of cardiovascular diseases. With a potential rollback of environmental protections, there could be an increase in cardiovascular events, including heart attacks and strokes, particularly in areas with high pollution levels. Environmental changes, such as altered habitats and climate patterns, could impact the distribution and prevalence of infectious diseases. A weakened commitment to addressing climate change may contribute to conditions that facilitate the spread of vector-borne diseases, affecting public health in various regions. Prolonged exposure to environmental stressors, such as pollution and climate-related changes, may compromise the immune system's ability to respond effectively to pathogens. This could result in an increased susceptibility to infectious diseases, potentially including the impact on the severity of diseases like COVID-19. Environmental degradation and the associated health threats can contribute to increased stress and anxiety among populations. The loss of natural environments, biodiversity, and concerns about the future may negatively impact mental health, contributing to conditions like depression and anxiety. The COVID-19 pandemic highlighted the importance of environmental factors in determining the severity of respiratory illnesses. Weakened environmental regulations could create conditions that exacerbate the impact of respiratory infections, including challenges in responding to future pandemics effectively. The pandemic also highlighted Trump's lack of ability to respond in an emergency. It's crucial to note that these potential health outcomes are complex and influenced by various factors. Environmental policies play a significant role in shaping the conditions in which individuals live, and a lack of commitment to environmental protection may exacerbate existing health disparities and place vulnerable populations at greater risk. Comprehensive and science-based environmental policies are essential for safeguarding public health and well-being. A Trump win in 2024 could have notable implications for the economy, especially in the context of climate change policies. Here are several potential outcomes for the economy if Trump wins in 2024 and pushes his agenda through. A Trump administration, as witnessed during his earlier term, may prioritize traditional energy industries such as coal, oil, and natural gas. This emphasis could lead to increased support for these sectors, potentially resulting in short-term economic gains for related businesses at the expense of the environment and public health outcomes. However, it may hinder the growth of cleaner and more sustainable energy alternatives, risking the long-term economic potential of the renewable energy sector. A lack of emphasis on addressing climate change could translate into reduced investments in clean energy technologies. This may impede the development and deployment of innovative solutions, potentially slowing down or ending the growth of a rapidly expanding global market for renewable energy. A decreased focus on environmental regulations and sustainability initiatives may create uncertainty for industries that have been investing in sustainable practices. Businesses that have aligned themselves with global efforts to combat climate change may face challenges in navigating shifting regulatory landscapes and consumer preferences. The global transition to a low-carbon economy presents significant economic opportunities. Countries that invest in renewable energy efficiency, and sustainable technologies stand to benefit from the growing demand for clean solutions. A lack of commitment to these areas could result in the U.S. missing out on potential economic growth and job creation within the green economy. Neglecting the urgency of addressing climate change may expose the U.S. economy to financial risks associated with the impacts of extreme weather events, rising sea levels, and other climate-related disruptions. Failure to adapt and build resilience could result in increased costs for businesses, insurers, and the government. And we all know what happens when the stock market gets spooked. Yet, a Trump win will be bad for the economy, but not just here but abroad. International cooperation on climate change has become a significant factor in global trade relations. A diminished commitment to climate action by the U.S. may affect its standing in global discussions and negotiations, potentially impacting trade agreements and competitiveness on the international stage. This and America First priorities will push the world more politically and economically away from America, in the long term contracting our economy overall. Policies supporting the fossil fuel industry may generate jobs in the short term, particularly in regions with a significant presence of these industries. However, a lack of investment in clean energy could hinder the potential for job creation in the rapidly growing renewable energy sector, potentially limiting economic stimulus in this area. Climate change poses risks to agriculture and critical infrastructure. A failure to address these risks could result in economic losses, including disruptions to food production, increased costs of adaptation, and potential damage to infrastructure. While certain sectors may experience short-term gains under a Trump administration, the long-term economic health of the nation may be jeopardized by neglecting the transition to a more sustainable and resilient economy. The global trend towards addressing climate change as a priority presents economic opportunities that countries can either embrace or risk being left behind. All of this combined, the cost to our health, our environment, and to the economy, there is no good, logical, or compelling reason to vote for Donald Trump in 2024. The demented strokes Donald Trump paints in his grandiose self-portrait of himself and a rosier America is nothing more than a bleak picture of the potential consequences of a Donald Trump victory in 2024. The looming threats of increased air pollution, heightened risks of respiratory illnesses and cardiovascular diseases, a compromised response to infectious diseases, and the potential for a surge in climate-related events highlight the grave implications for public health. Simultaneously, the disregard for environmental protections and the rollback of climate policies pose severe risks to our planet. From intensified hurricanes affecting the Gulf of Mexico and the Atlantic seaboard to the degradation of ecosystems and the increased likelihood of species extinction, the environmental devastation that could unfold under such a scenario is alarming. Donald J. Trump is an extinction-level event and a clear and present danger to the United States of America and to the entire world. Economically, the potential ramifications are equally troubling. Focusing on traditional energy industries at the expense of the burgeoning renewable energy sector risks missing out on global economic opportunities, market uncertainty for sustainable industries, financial risks due to climate change impacts, and the possibility of the U.S. lagging in international trade relations could hinder long-term economic growth and competitiveness. And an isolated United States will find itself without any allies, friends, trust, or respect. And the economy will contract because of it. Do we really want to find ourselves in that position? In conclusion, when considering the cumulative toll on our health, environment, and economy, there is no good, logical, or compelling reason to vote for Donald Trump in 2024. The urgency of addressing climate change and promoting sustainable policies is not only a matter of responsible governance but a crucial step towards securing a healthier, more resilient future for our nation and the generations to come. As voters, the choices we make in the upcoming election will shape not only the trajectory of our country but also the trajectory of our shared planet. Thank you for watching. My channel, known as the Renaissance Spirit, is dedicated to the pursuits of a just, equitable, and humanitarian world. Video topics encompass areas including the history, archaeology, politics, religion, personal development, society, culture, social and environmental justice, and other topics of liberal arts and sciences, including ancient Rome and the Roman Empire, which is a great comparison and contrast of the modern world. Topics perfect for the true modern polymath. The Renaissance ushered in a golden age in the pursuit of knowledge both lost to time and yet to be discovered. It gave birth to the Enlightenment and the Age of Reason. Embracing truth, knowledge, and an understanding and compassion for humanity opens up the world to each of us individually and improves all of humanity, affording us the opportunity to be better stewards of the earth and to each other. The Renaissance spirit, more than just a philosophy or style, but a style for living, learning, growing, and thinking. Please subscribe, turn on notifications, and share. If you're looking to explore and experience what life has to offer, I'm sure you'll enjoy the other videos on my channel. Please peruse, and let me know in the comments what you get out of them and what other videos you'd like to see. But first, please take the quiz next to see if you're a Renaissance spirit. Live the Renaissance spirit.